3 words. That's all it took to wipe the smile from Adam Sandler's face. For more than 3 decades, he's been known as Hollywood's funniest, most easygoing star. Fans had seen him joke through awkward interviews, laugh off criticism, and shrug away negativity. But they had never truly seen him angry. Not the kind of anger that silences an entire room. And then Behar said 3 words. What followed would become one of the most unforgettable moments ever seen on daytime television. Not because anyone was yelling. Adam Sandler never needed to raise his voice. Instead, everything changed because of what he said about Chris Farley. And because of one question that left Behar with no answer. Joy has wrapped up countless celebrity interviews throughout her career. This time, the interview wrapped up her. Before we get into what happened, make sure you subscribe, because the 3 words that changed everything, and the shocking ending no one expected, are coming up. The atmosphere inside the View studio was buzzing from the moment the audience arrived. Adam Sandler had become increasingly selective about television appearances. At 59, he had settled into a life that balanced blockbuster projects, sold-out comedy tours, and precious time with his family. He wasn't chasing headlines anymore. He didn't need the publicity. Still, there was plenty to celebrate. Happy Gilmore 2 had just shattered Netflix streaming records, while his upcoming collaboration with George Clooney was already generating serious awards season excitement. Please welcome Adam Sandler. The introduction sparked an immediate standing ovation. As always, Sandler walked onto the stage with his signature relaxed stride. A little athlete, a little guy who looked like he just rolled out of bed. The crowd adored him. Many had grown up quoting Billy Madison and Happy Gilmore. Others had introduced their own children to Hotel Transylvania. Some remembered laughing through Grown-Ups, while others admitted Click had unexpectedly brought them to tears. Few actors had connected with audiences across so many generations. "Great to be here, ladies," Sandler said with his familiar half-smile as he settled into his chair. The conversation flowed naturally. For the first 15 minutes, everything felt warm, funny, and effortless. They discussed Happy Gilmore 2, the celebrity cameos, and how much fun it had been working alongside his daughters, Sadie and Sunny. They shifted to his newest dramatic project, J. Kelly, and his reunion with director Noah Baumbach. Then came stories from his latest comedy tour, where Sandler admitted that, even after decades on stage, he still battled nerves before every performance. The audience loved every second. But someone else had been watching much more carefully. Behar. She barely interrupted. She barely smiled. She simply waited. And if you looked closely, you could almost tell she was preparing to steer the conversation somewhere very different. Then it happened. Whoopi Goldberg unknowingly opened the door. "You know, Adam," she said warmly, "one thing I've always respected is that you've built this incredible career without pretending to be someone you're not. You've stayed true to yourself." Sandler smiled sincerely. "That really means a lot, Whoopi." He paused. "I've always believed the goal is simple. If people leave one of my movies happier than when they walked in, then I did my job. Life's hard enough already. If I can help somebody forget their problems for an hour or two and just laugh, that's success to me." The audience applauded. It was a simple philosophy, one he'd lived by for years. Then, Joy leaned forward. "Can I challenge that for a second?" The energy inside the studio shifted almost instantly. The other hosts recognized the tone. Viewers at home probably did too. This wasn't curiosity. This was confrontation. Sandler turned toward her, still calm, still polite. "Of course," he replied. "Go ahead." Joy tilted her head. This whole "I just want to make people happy" narrative. She emphasized the phrase with exaggerated air quotes. "Don't you think that's a little convenient?" The audience grew noticeably quieter. Joy continued. "You've made some of the worst reviewed movies in Hollywood. You've collected multiple Razzie Awards. For decades, critics have absolutely destroyed your work." She leaned back. "So isn't this 'I'm just here to make people happy' explanation really just a way to avoid taking responsibility for making bad movies?" The room fell completely silent. And what Adam Sandler said next would change the interview forever. "And every time your answer is exactly the same." Joy folded her hands and looked directly at Adam. "I'm just trying to make people laugh." She paused, allowing the words to linger. "Some people would call that a convenient excuse. For 30 years you've been collecting enormous paychecks making movies that, by your own standards, probably aren't very good." The laughter vanished. Only moments earlier, the audience had been smiling. Now the studio was wrapped in complete silence. The panel exchanged uneasy glances. Even the production crew seemed to stop moving. But Adam Sandler never reacted the way anyone expected. He didn't interrupt. He didn't roll his eyes. He simply looked at Joy. Those calm eyes carried decades of experience. They had witnessed heartbreaking loss. They had survived rejection after rejection before success finally arrived. They had learned that criticism eventually becomes background noise. A con job. Adam repeated the phrase carefully. "That's an interesting way of looking at it." Joy took his composure as an invitation to continue. "I'm only saying what plenty of people already believe. You've built an empire making the same kind of juvenile comedy over and over. The same funny voices. The same jokes. The same group of friends appearing in nearly every movie." She leaned forward confidently. "So where does entertaining people end and taking advantage of low expectations begin?" Her words hung over the room like a storm cloud. For several seconds, Adam said nothing. He slowly nodded, almost as if he were genuinely considering every criticism. Then he answered. His tone remained respectful. But something had changed. There was a quiet weight behind every word. "You know, Joy, you're right about one thing. I have been making the same kind of movies for about 30 years. The same voices. The same friends. The same jokes that critics love to tear apart." He leaned in just a little closer. "You want to know why?" Joy smiled confidently. "Please." "We'd all love to hear it." Adam took a slow breath. Then everything changed. Because after Chris Farley passed away, his voice caught for the briefest moment. Almost impossible to notice. Yet everyone in the studio felt it. When Chris died, I made a promise to myself. I promised I'd never lose sight of what it feels like to make someone genuinely laugh. Not a polite laugh. Not a fake laugh. The kind of laugh that makes somebody forget, even for a few moments, how difficult life can be. The mention of Chris Farley transformed the atmosphere instantly. The audience became completely still. No whispers. No applause. Nothing. Adam continued quietly. Chris was the funniest human being I've ever known. And even after all these years, I still think about him every single day. When I'm making a movie, I still catch myself wondering, would Chris laugh at this? Would he jump into this scene? Would he make this moment even funnier? He turned and looked directly at Joy. So yes, I make silly movies. I do ridiculous voices. I keep working with the same friends. Because life doesn't last forever. And I'd rather spend my time creating memories with people I care about than chasing approval from critics. He shrugged gently. If that makes me a con artist in your eyes, I can live with that. But millions of people who watched Happy Gilmore 2 almost immediately after it premiered might see things a little differently. For a brief moment, Joy seemed caught off guard. Then she regrouped. That's an emotional story, Adam. But popularity has never been the same thing as quality. Fast food restaurants serve millions of customers every day. That doesn't suddenly make them fine dining. Adam gave a small laugh. It wasn't amused. So, you just compared my movies to fast food? Joy remained firm. My point is simple. We've seen what you're capable of. We've seen performances that proved you're an exceptional actor. So why spend so much time making? She hesitated. Adam's expression never changed. Making what? His voice had become almost whisper quiet. The silence somehow made it even more intense. Go ahead. Finish the sentence. Joy took one last breath before answering. Making lazy cash grabs. The audience reacted instantly. A wave of shocked gasps swept across the studio. Several people covered their mouths. The other hosts looked stunned. Then something happened that nobody expected. Adam Sandler slowly rose from his chair. The movement was calm, unhurried. But it was so unexpected that Joy Behar instinctively leaned back. But Adam didn't move with anger. He moved with purpose. This wasn't the reaction of someone who had finally lost control. It was the response of a man who had spent decades being underestimated and had finally decided it was time to explain exactly who he was. Let me tell you what I think is lazy, Joy. He stepped toward the panel desk. Not quickly. Not aggressively. Just calmly with complete confidence. Lazy is sitting comfortably and criticizing the work other people spent years creating. Lazy is quoting reviews instead of creating something people remember. Lazy is believing you understand audiences better than the audiences understand themselves. He stopped in front of the table. The studio was so quiet that every word echoed. I've made more than 50 films. I've written many of them. I've produced them. I've helped cast them. I've worked on the music. I've spent years building projects that employed thousands of people. Crew members, lighting technicians, drivers, caterers, background performers, families who put food on the table because those so-called lazy cash grabs kept them working. His voice remained controlled. But every sentence carried the weight of years spent answering the same criticism. I've spent decades touring comedy clubs. I've stood in front of arenas packed with 20,000 people and asked nothing more than for them to laugh. I've written songs that became part of family traditions. The Hanukkah song still gets played every holiday season. He looked directly at Joy. So tell me, what have you created that people will still be talking about 30 years from now? Joy started to respond. Adam gently continued before she could. You want to discuss artistic credibility? Let's do that. Punch-drunk love. Paul Thomas Anderson believed in me before a lot of other people did. One-cut gems. I gave everything I had because the Safdie brothers wanted every scene exactly right. The Meyerowitz stories. Noah Baumbach trusted me with a role that demanded honesty and vulnerability. Vic Hustle. I trained alongside professional basketball players for months because I wanted every moment to feel authentic. He paused. Then quietly asked, but those aren't the movies you want to talk about, are they? They don't fit the story you've already decided to tell. The version where I'm just a guy making goofy jokes while collecting big paychecks. It's easier to believe that than to admit something much simpler. Maybe I've spent 30 years giving audiences exactly what they wanted, while you've spent years telling them what they should want. Joy straightened in her chair. I think you're becoming defensive. My questions are about the quality of your work. Adam slowly shook his head. No. They're not. They're about something else. They're about finding someone you assume won't push back, and using that moment to make yourself look clever. He spoke without raising his voice. But here's what you've missed. I've spent my entire career listening to critics. People convinced they're smarter than the audiences buying tickets. People who treat comedy like it somehow matters less than drama. He smiled gently. You know what 30 years have taught me? The people who dismiss comedy are often the same people who have never made anyone laugh. It's easy to criticize. It's much harder to create. It's easy to judge from a comfortable chair. It's much harder to walk onto a stage carrying nothing but a microphone, hoping complete strangers will trust you enough to laugh. Then Adam turned away from the panel. He faced the audience. I want to ask you something. How many of you have watched one of my movies during one of the hardest times in your life? Hands shot into the air all across the studio. Some people raised both. How many of you have put on Billy Madison or Happy Gilmore because you simply needed to laugh? The sea of raised hands barely moved. Faces throughout the audience filled with smiles. Others became emotional. Adam asked one final question. And how many of you watched Click with your family, knowing exactly how it would end, and still cried anyway? Even more hands appeared. Several audience members nodded through tears. The connection between Adam Sandler and the people in that room had become impossible to ignore. It wasn't built on awards. It wasn't built on critics. It was built on memories. On comfort. On laughter. On moments people carried with them long after the credits rolled. Adam looked around the audience one last time before turning back toward the panel. That's what I've always tried to do. I try to make people feel something. Sometimes it's laughter. Sometimes it's laughter. Sometimes it's tears. And sometimes it's both at once. Adam paused, letting the silence carry the weight of his words. I'm not going to apologize for making stories that connect with people simply because they aren't considered sophisticated enough by everyone. Then he looked back at Joy. This time, his voice became quieter. More personal. You know what really disappoints me? You could have asked me anything today. You could have asked about Chris Farley. You could have asked what it felt like losing someone who changed my life. You could have asked about being fired from Saturday Night Live and finding the strength to keep going. You could have asked what it's like raising 2 daughters in Hollywood. Or how my wife and I have managed to stay together in an industry where so many relationships fall apart. He stopped for a moment. You could have had a genuine conversation with a real person. His next words barely rose above a whisper. But instead, you chose to be cruel. The audience remained completely silent. And for what? A headline? A viral moment? A few days of people talking online. He slowly shook his head. Is that really what this has become? No one moved. The cameras kept rolling. Joy sat motionless. Her expression shifted from confidence to discomfort to something far more difficult to read. Around the table, the other hosts remained silent, each processing the moment in their own way. Adam spoke again. Calm. Steady. Certain. You know what separates us, Joy? When I leave this studio today, I'm going home. I'm going to sit down with my wife. I'm going to spend time with my daughters. I'm going to have dinner with the people I love most. And tomorrow, I'm going to wake up and try to create something that makes somebody smile. He looked at her with quiet compassion. And you? What comes next? Another celebrity to tear apart? Another opinion everyone forgets a week later? Another conversation built around making people feel ashamed of what brings them happiness? Joy suddenly pushed back her chair. Her hands trembled as she reached for her microphone. She struggled to remove it. The clip caught once. Then again. Finally, it came loose and landed on the desk with a sharp clatter that echoed across the silent studio. A production assistant instinctively stepped forward. Joy quietly motioned for them to stay back. Behind the audience, producers could be seen through the control room window, exchanging hurried gestures as they tried to decide what to do next. Joy finally spoke. I think I need a moment. Her voice was barely audible. Without another word, she turned and walked off the set. The sound of her footsteps slowly faded behind the curtain. Then, nothing. No applause. No conversation. Only silence. For several long seconds, everyone remained frozen. The hosts. The audience. Even the camera operators. No one seemed sure what would happen next. And then Adam Sandler did the one thing nobody expected. He laughed. Not a mocking laugh. Not a victorious laugh. Just the same warm, unmistakable laugh audiences had known for decades. The laugh that had filled comedy clubs. The laugh that had survived heartbreak. The laugh that had carried him through personal loss, professional setbacks, and years of criticism. He smiled and settled comfortably back into his chair. Well, I definitely didn't expect today to go like that. For a split second, the room stayed quiet. Then the audience exploded. People leaped to their feet. The applause became thunderous. Cheers echoed throughout the studio. Some audience members wiped tears from their faces. Others embraced the people sitting beside them. The atmosphere had completely transformed. Whoopi Goldberg slowly shook her head in disbelief. Adam? I'd been doing this for a long time, and I honestly don't know what to say. That was unforgettable. Sarah nodded in agreement. Some of those things needed to be said. Adam simply smiled. That familiar, goofy grin returned as though the tension had never existed. He gave a small shrug. What can I say? I just came here hoping to make people smile. So, Adam said with a small grin. She asked a question. I answered it. That's how conversations are supposed to work, isn't it? Then he turned and looked directly into the camera. For just a moment, the playful comedian everyone recognized disappeared. What viewers saw instead was simply Adam Sandler. Honest. Calm. Completely sincere. To everyone watching who's ever been told your taste isn't good enough, that what makes you laugh isn't intelligent enough, or that the things bringing you happiness somehow aren't sophisticated enough. Don't believe it. Enjoy what you enjoy. Laugh at what genuinely makes you laugh. Watch the movies that make your day a little brighter. Because life is far too short to spend it chasing someone else's approval. A brief pause. Then that familiar sparkle returned to his eyes. And if you're thinking about watching Billy Madison for the 100th time this weekend, he smiled. I completely support that decision. Personally, I still think it holds up. The audience burst into warm, genuine laughter. The tension that had filled the room only moments earlier finally melted away. Adam leaned back comfortably in his chair, looking completely relaxed again. Now, weren't we talking about Happy Gilmore too? I've got some hilarious stories about working with Bad Bunny that you're definitely going to want to hear. The audience applauded once more, and the interview shifted back into the easygoing conversation everyone had expected from the beginning. But outside the studio, something much bigger was already happening. Clips from the exchange spread across social media at lightning speed. Within hours, discussions about the interview dominated online conversations. Yet what people remembered most wasn't the disagreement. It wasn't the tension. It wasn't even the sharpest lines that were exchanged. What stayed with viewers was the glimpse behind Adam Sandler's familiar comedic image. His memories of Chris Farley. His belief that making people laugh has real value. His reminder that sometimes the people who bring the most joy to others quietly carry struggles of their own. Across the entertainment world, fellow comedians praised his perspective. Many described him as one of the most genuine and generous people they'd ever worked with. Others pointed to his decades-long reputation for loyalty, kindness, and treating everyone on set with respect. Even some longtime critics began looking at his career through a different lens. Instead of asking whether every movie fit traditional critical standards, they began asking another question. Why had millions of people continued choosing his films for more than 30 years? Perhaps that enduring connection with audiences was part of the answer. As for Joy Behar, she returned to The View shortly afterward, and the program moved on to its usual discussions. Adam Sandler did exactly what he has always done. He went home. He spent time with his family. Then he returned to making the kinds of movies that had connected with audiences for generations. Because from the very beginning, his mission had never been complicated. It was simply this: make people smile. Make them laugh. Help them forget their worries, even if only for a little while. Now it's your turn. What do you think? Was the conversation fair or did it cross the line? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy powerful celebrity stories, unforgettable moments, and behind-the-scenes Hollywood drama, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next video.